Universal basic income is the idea of giving every citizen between the age of 18 and 65 a fixed amount of money. The important keyword here is universal or sometimes unconditional, as this income doesn't require proof of unemployability. In fact, even people who are employed would get the money, regardless of their income level. The massive circle jerk about this idea is gaining more and more popularity because of the current advancements in automation and AI, which many people fear will make us all unemployable in the near future. And while that's of course questionable, the idea of universal basic income has some notable supporters, like for example world-renowned economist Guy Standing, portrait sitting. And while I personally find the idea of free money without having to do anything simply amazing, there are some minor problems we need to address. Number 1. Incentive structure. The idea most proponents have is that with, let's say, €1,000 a month of UBI, more people would be willing to work undesirable minimum wage jobs. Think about it, if you make €750 after taxes with your shitty job at McDonald's, you'd be at 1,750 if there was unconditional basic income. Nice. However, working at McDonald's isn't all that great in the first place, and if you don't work at all, you'd still get €1,000. So what if your job is even shittier than that? There are a lot of jobs that come to mind that would be great for close to €2,000 of net income, but maybe not so great if you had more than half your income for just playing video games all day. Incentivizing employment has always been problematic, and policymakers have struggled to find the sweet spot between providing a living wage and getting people back to work for way longer than this idea existed. Now, proponents usually point out that this policy would still leave people better off because they could now pursue their dreams instead of working in a cubicle or clean toilets all day. But sadly, an economy of poets just isn't sustainable by automation, yet. Maybe in a few decades, but right now we still do need cab drivers, care assistants and plumbers. Number 2. Education. Closely related to work incentive is education. While the Pirate Party of Germany is always raving on about pushing access to education, we have to be realistic and face the harsh truth. Education is often acquired by necessity. Especially people from poor and less educated households are predicted to disregard education when a UBI is guaranteed. Their prospective earning potential will likely not exceed the provided support by much, which even further decreases their incentive to go to school and maybe even transition from a low social status to the middle class. The advancement of technology and improvement of our standard of living depends on early education. Taking away incentives to just sit your ass down and study might bring us terrible unforeseen consequences and breed a generation of entitled, lazy and unmotivated children. Number 3. Financing. Okay, so by far the most difficult problem to solve is, how are we supposed to pay for all of that? European countries like Germany and Sweden that push democratic socialism already know how expensive it is to just support the unemployed. Cost projections for implementing the UBI in Germany are around the €1 trillion mark, exceeding the current budget for all benefits, including retirement. Proposed solutions on how to finance all of that are, among other things, a 50% value-added tax or a 65% income tax. Why so high? Because a large chunk of the population, even the working population, is not going to contribute any net taxes at all. That means that the remaining part of the population, the rich and powerful part that is, has to contribute with a larger part of their income. But wait, I can already hear all the proponents scream at the top of their lungs, automation tax. I didn't even know about this idea until very recently, because so far it hasn't been discussed scientifically. The reason for that probably being that it actively works against technology and automation by incentivizing slave labor, making it ultimately disadvantageous for countries that do tax. Think about it. Right now the reason why everyone produces in China is because labor costs there are so low. If China suddenly decided to tax their slave labor conditions, would companies still produce there? No, they would go someplace cheaper and China would lose all the sweet business contracts and regular business tax revenue. Automation is supposed to get rid of these shitty working conditions and improve not only productivity, but also our life as a whole. Regressive tax structures like that only hinder development and make us go back to being cavemen. But actually the problem goes deeper than that. What is automation? Do we need to tax laundrettes and farmers into oblivion? They sure use automation. What about startups that invent a new fancy technology? Technically they didn't even steal any jobs because the jobs weren't there in the first place. Would they still have to pay? If so, we would actively work against innovation and progress, which is probably the dumbest idea of them all. Number 4. Other miscellaneous problems. And as if all of that wasn't enough already, there are so many other problems with the proposed implementations of the UBI. For example, if you give every citizen a check over €1,000 each month, people in Munich are going to have a lot less than people in Blackmar, because their rent is about 5 times as high. It's pretty safe to assume that no matter how you are designing the policy, some people are going to complain that it's unfair because in their subjective opinion, they would need more money than someone else, for whatever arbitrary reason. And then there is the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, which means that at 0% unemployment, inflation is going to increase even further. The list of problems just goes on and on. But before I conclude this video and shrug off the idea as hippie nonsense, we need to acknowledge one thing. Universal basic income hasn't really been tried yet. There have been some attempts though, for example in Namibia, where a German Protestant organization funded a pilot project. I'm hesitant to call it a study though, because the raw data from the project isn't available to scientists, and all we got as an evaluation is a non-peer-reviewed PDF file that reads like an advertisement full of extremely implausible claims. Based on an interview with a local community leader, a journalist from a German newspaper concluded that there is not any development to be seen, making the original evaluation even more questionable. Reality might prove all the critics wrong in the end, but from all we've seen so far, universal basic income just doesn't seem to be viable in the form it's currently being proposed.